Right, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Right, can I get you sat in your chairs and with your legs just slightly width apart and just relax your back and just ever so gently roll them shoulders. Roll them shoulders back and stop for a minute. Take a nice breath in and a breath out. Now with your shoulders going forwards, just a nice forward movement. Yeah? And then stop for a moment and take a nice breath in and a breath out. Now I want you to all stand up. You can see you all looking good. What's you doing? Right, I'm going to show you. I want you stood up with your legs width apart and just nice and relaxed. And we've all had a nice big fat dinner, hopefully. So just gently let your tummy just let it all hang out. Don't worry about it, just nice and relaxed. We're all friends now. So just relax and let it all go. And what I want you to do is, again, that light breath in, so with your hands out, so almost like a yoga move. A breath in, bring your hands in, and a breath out. And if at any point you feel a little bit lightheaded and dizzy, with one hand on the chair, and then again, just a nice breath in, and a breath out. Lovely. Now with your hands, can you all hear me like this? I feel a bit more comfortable, to be honest, than a bit corporate behind there. So hands out, and I want you to just rev your engine. And I want you to, like, as if you think you're playing your toys like a proper Now I want you to put a bit of a zzz, 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 zzz. I want to hear them z's, come on, zzz, zzz. Lovely. Now hands nice and relaxed and just give them a gentle shake. Now with your knees, a bit of a nodding policeman, so just gently, your knees, just your knees. And the person next to you, I want you to look to them and go, who are you? And if at any point you find this is too much, just stop, and then when you feel better, start it again. Yeah? So, ever so gently, hands outwards again, your left arm to the left, and then back to the centre. Then your right arm to the side, and then back to the centre. And then hands down. Now, I'm going to do now a task for your tech party. We do it as part of like a vocal warm-up and to get our breathing nice and relaxed. So, I will say, I can count to 1. I can count to 1, 2. I can count to 1, 2, 3. You get the idea? And we'll do it to say, we'll try 12, because I think you're all quite energised. So, I can count to 1. I can count to 1, 2. I can count to 1, 2, 3. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4. Great, you can count. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A little bit of enthusiasm. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A bit of dancing to it. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Come on, at the back of the room. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Bit louder. I can count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That just gives you a rough idea of some of the warm-ups that we do at the Warblers. We do a bit of posture, light dance, a bit of friendship, a bit cognitive. So yeah, I know it's obviously in Wigan, but we meet every Tuesday at Douglas Bank, 12 till 2. Give and take. We're on Twitter, #Wigan Warblers. We've got a Facebook page, but we're sat at the back table, the naughty table. So if you want to come and ask any questions, or just, you know, anything like that, you know where we are. Thank you very much for letting me
Thank you. energised listening to Ben Greenwood, and it's all about the benefits of letting go. We've heard about control and command, and this is the opposite. So, Ben, thank you.
I'm not sure how I'm going to follow that really, so I'll just go through this. So I'm absolutely delighted to have been invited to speak here on BWD Winter, and the benefits of comms people, probably counterintuitive, sometimes letting go and trusting non-comms people, especially such as frontline staff. I know it's going to be very tough to follow the previous speakers, who I thought were all excellent. Shows there's so many powerful examples in both the NHS and councils, which shows benefits to patients and residents of public services utilising social media. So I just want to start with a very quick summary of who I am. I work for Blackburn with Darwen Council. I'm guessing, I could be wrong, that I'm the only local authority person in the room, apart from one. Hello, we'll talk later. Swap notes about council. And I've worked in communications, although most of my job now is working with partners in the NHS. I've been at Blackburn for just over 10 years, and during that time I've seen us become more and more mature at using social media. I'll have to be honest, when we started out, we were quite naive about using social media, so we just set up pages because people wanted us to set pages up. So I remember one of the Facebook pages we did was Building Skills for the Future. I don't know if anyone remembers that programme. Well, we set one up, a Facebook page for BSF, for the kids to put in. We got 3 likes in a year. So that experiment was quickly abandoned. I'm also going to start with a bit of a confession. While I'm here presenting to you about this, and while I'm quite passionate about BWD Winter, I can't certainly take much credit for this. In fact, it was the brainchild of one of our previous speakers, Mark, who used to work for the council, and another colleague of mine, Lucy Hyam, who now works for the NHS. But most of the credit for making BWD Winter as successful as it has been is to the officers who run it day in, day out. And I think the key to what we tried to achieve here is having the confidence and trust to devolve power to the front line. Just a little bit of background. One of the key criticisms all upper tier authorities get during icy and snowy weather is that the gritters are not out. I guess there's people in this room who've done the same. Council, you know, they're not gritting the things, you can't get anywhere. I think, you know, as a country, if we get a little bit of snow, everything goes crazy. So we get all the flack. I've done it myself actually when I was a journalist and social media was in its infancy. I used to give the query about, you know, where's all the gritters? George has complained. We would try to update residents through the Twitter corporate account, but what we found, most of the people getting angry with us weren't using Twitter. A lot of the negative comments and hence negative perceptions was through Facebook. Blackburn with Darwen Council doesn't have a Facebook page. We have separate pages, so we had no direct channel to counter some of the criticism we were getting about what we were doing. We would get a lot of calls from people complaining that routes were being gritted, and the classic one, you know, as my local authority colleague would know, why are we paying so much council tax when you can't even grit the roads? Same with bins as well. We always get, you know, you don't collect my bins. So apparently that's all councils do, grit roads and do bins. Also led to media queries each year. Are you prepared for winter? It was a problem which was damaging trust in the council. And I'm a firm believer one of the fundamental aims of communications is ultimately about building trust in your organisation and their brands. So what did we do? We looked at various options, but we concluded the best way would be to set up a Facebook page dedicated to our winter services, which run between October and March. I'm not sure if you remember, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, we were getting very deep snow in March. I think there was one picture we saw on BWD Winter of, I thought it was from Canada actually, because it was that deep. The Facebook page was primarily to get weather updates out, tell people where we would be gritting, and just general safety messages. It was run by the communications team, but we soon realised this was not an adequate solution. It would only work if we put out real-time information. And certainly as comms professionals, we couldn't do that. I don't think there's many comms professionals in this room, unless it was an emergency, would be Facebooking out at 1 AM. I certainly wouldn't do that. So when I first joined the council, the default position was communications had to be controlled centrally, otherwise it will be a reputational risk. So what we went on to do is we thought, well, wouldn't it be better if we actually got officers to run it? Now, again, that was a risk. There's some senior managers and us ourselves. We were a bit, should we let go, you know, is it appropriate? But we thought if we could train them, we'd be able to get some good outcomes. I mean, having a communications team actually running it, as I said, defeats the object. And one of the things the officers said to us, they were quite worried about criticism, whether you should delete posts, and you know, how do you directly engage. But I think we as I was saying, were confident we could train them up to put out good quality content appropriate for the audience and avoid any of the common pitfalls. As you know, there's always news stories about some of the cleverest people putting something inappropriate on tweets and causing immediate storm. And I think it is testament to the officers who actually run the page that they always come across as warm, friendly and understanding rather than the stereotypical bureaucrat. For example, a typical post on BWD Winter would be, don't know if I can say that right, did that come out quite okay? It's cold tonight, please stay safe, here are the gritting tonight. Probably emoji as well. I mean, I'm not a big fan of emojis, but you know, I think I'm in the past really on that. And so what we became an enabler and not a doer, and I'm glad to say it's been very, very successful. So we'll go on to some outcomes. I'll get to some hard figures in a minute because I guess that's probably what you want. The first outcome was senior managers could actually see the benefit of the approach. But what was really interesting for me and for a comms person is that people who had no real connection to the council, other than perhaps paying council tax, were actually going on defending what the council were doing when people were being negative and complaining about the lack of gritting. So someone would put, no critters have gone out tonight, and someone would come out and say, actually, I've just seen a gritter coming round. I mean, we all know there's a narrative around councils driven nationally, that we're all jobs worse, we all waste taxpayers' money and never actually deliver any services. So to see people actually defending the council was great, as I think when we do it, there's always suspicion, in the words of Christine Keeler from the Profumo scandal. Well, you would say that, wouldn't you? It also built credibility in the council that people who were non-council were actually defending it. But another really interesting aspect, and something that I really took an interest in, and especially for a council with a responsibility for adult social care, BWD Winter enabled community responses to winter issues. As part of our drive to get more communities more resilient at winter, the council developed something called Grit Squads, groups of residents who would help grit the streets and check on their neighbours. It was part of our behaviour change campaign called Your Call. And BWD Winter was a great way for for Grit Squads to keep in touch with each other and also help them target their efforts where it'd be most beneficial. To give you an example, this is a made-up one, but I could have picked anyway. Someone on Facebook might say, it's particularly bad on this street, and Mrs. Miggins might need some help. A member of the Grit Squad would see that and say, right, I'm on it. Now, I'll go out on a limb here and say that intervention may have prevented Mrs. Miggins becoming ill and potentially stopped her going to hospital. And I'm fairly convinced BWD has had a positive effect on the borough's health. I think that's the page's major strength. Big issue for council is loneliness and isolation, and this, just through Facebook, even though in a way, it's quite a small thing, was bringing communities together. So I'll just go on to some figures. Currently, it's got 10,000 likes. By far, in fact, I think it is that's more likes than every single Facebook page we've got. It's more than that. And since it started, I'm told we've seen a reduction in about 10,000 calls to the council during the winter months. Just to give you a real-life example of how effective it can be, does everyone remember the 2015 floods? It wiped out entire town centres. It did in Rochdale anyway, it was like a tidal wave. Blackburn with Down, pleased to say, didn't get hit as badly as other areas, but still bad for that. But though it's still very, very successful. And when we're hit by floods again, Blackburn with Down is not just stories about flood. We do other things there. It provided a good vehicle to get information out about road closures and flood messages. One post about a road closure due to the floods was shared 154 times and attracted 160 comments and 96 likes and other emotions, mainly angry ones because of the rain. They've also used, the officers have also used videos themselves, so we don't go down and take videos, they do it on their iPad, and they've done a video about future roadworks and the reasons behind them, and that was watched 13,000 times. That level of reach you can't get in the local paper, especially with local papers as they are going on. In fact, actually, during the floods, we do comms for Rossendale Council as part of a shared service. And I was actually getting earache from people in Rossendale about why we're not doing something similar here. So they're saying, why is Blackburn better than us? So we're looking at ways of devolving power there. I'm not going to stand here and say Blackburn with Darwin is an exemplar of how to use social media. We've still got a long way to go in becoming more digitally minded and building on the successes of BWD Winters. I mean, we've already got our children's centres have now got Facebook pages, and our leisure centres are using it as well. And without sounding like an X Factor contestant, we're still on a journey to make best use. But I'm fairly convinced BWD Winter success shows that communicators don't need to control every channel. And indeed, in certain cases, it's actually not letting go can be actually more detrimental. I'll just leave you with a couple of quotes. This is from the officers who run the page. We're delighted with the page and really enjoy interacting directly with the public. It certainly meant our service is perceived better by the public. And this is one from the public as well. We really appreciate this page. It gives out great information, which really helps. So thanks for listening, and I'll take any questions. That's always a good one. I think it was part of a funding bid we did, which meant we had to have a communications channel for year-round about roads. It wasn't because we were getting loads of call and potholes, it was just to access the fund. Again, I wouldn't say that's best practice, but we are where we are. But it's still phenomenally successful. It's still run by the officers, and they're still getting messages out on that. So hopefully that answers your question. That is about training, I think, stopping to get into arguments. It's about training and reassuring them that they're coming. I'm pleased to say on that page, I can't think of any time where we've had a situation where a member of staff has got into arguments about it. And I think it's about training. If you don't have the training, then you are taking a massive reputational risk by letting go. So training and support. We're still admins of the page. We very, very rarely intervene. In fact, I can't think of any time since it started where we've had to. But I think, yeah, it goes down into the training you do initially. Have Rossendale started using Facebook now? Well, they had a council page before we came along, but the two things we've done at Rossendale, which, you know, because of the success we had at BWD Winter, we convinced their senior managers to do, is we've got a bins page, or environmental services, because it covers parks, and that is being very, very well used, because as I say, one of the common complaints councils get, whether it's fair or not, is you're not collecting our bins, or we never see road sweepers, and the parks are a mess. I mean, of course, we've gone through quite a long time of austerity, so that has impacted on it, but we are able to use that page, the officers are able to use that page to directly respond to queries. You know, if a bin hasn't been collected, they can say, right, we're on it, or give reasons as well, and it's actually been quite successful now. In fact, it's been more successful than the Roslindale Council Facebook page normally, because I think people want that. They do want to interact directly with officers. They don't really want to interact with, you know, corporate comm stooges or anything like that. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much. As a comm stooge, I know what you mean. But when I was working in a hospital, we were accused of having too much control, not wanting to let go. And I was speaking to comms people while planning this event, and one said to me, there's no way I would let any other team in this hospital run their own Twitter account. You know, but you can, can't you, with the right support and training, and that's what people want. So it's really interesting to hear these different experiences. So I'm going to invite up a speaker, two speakers, who are going to tell us about their organisation being particularly keen in enabling their different teams to use social media. I think you'll all enjoy what they've got to tell us. That's Gareth Thomas and Alison Johnston.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Alison, just in case anybody is confused.
I'm Gareth, obviously.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us. We came from South Wales yesterday afternoon. Just a beautiful city. We've never been here before, so we had a good wander about yesterday. We want to come back already, so lovely little city that you have. Okay, so we are from the Welsh Ambulance Services. I'll do the boring sort of like background and history bit, and Gareth will have all the glory talking about some of the exciting stuff that we're up to. So we are an all-Wales service. We provide, in case anybody doesn't know, lots of different services, the 999 stuff, so our emergency medical services, non-emergency transport services, NHS Direct Wales, which still runs in Wales now, and 111 is coming in incrementally with us. We have other services like our community first responders with our volunteers, as well as volunteer car drivers. So just to give you a picture, we have got a lot of different staff providing lots of different services. I'm supposed to do the click in, right? Cool. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. So it's just like some people in our patient experience and community involvement team. We're very passionate about what we do in Wales. Our role is to get our welly boots on, out and about, across Wales, being visible to communities, talking to people about what they think of our services, if they haven't used our services, what to expect from us. We gather feedback to inform service improvement and change, which can sometimes be hard and sometimes we struggle with that, but we have evidence of lots of good service improvements and changes that we've done as a result of people's feedback. Huge part of our role is educating people about our services. So, you know, when we're out and about talking to communities, you generally find that people want to know the practical skills around life-saving, first aid, CPR demonstrations, what's a defibrillator and how can I use it. It's a lot of educational stuff that we do with, you know, lots of different types of communities. Lots of our work is targeted at maybe more vulnerable communities who may struggle to use and access our services. So we do loads of sort of outreach work with deaf, hard of hearing communities, vision loss groups, people with assistance dogs and guide dogs. We'll do loads of work with people with learning disabilities and dementia. A lot of people are afraid to call the service, so lots of our educational work is around just talking to them about what happens when you call and what to expect from our services. So engagement is really important to us as a team. We've been about 10 years now in the Welsh Ambulance Services. It's taken a long time for people to sort of understand our work and what we do. Lots of people think our work is quite fluffy, and not sort of like the core delivery that some of our other services provide, but we're winning hearts and minds as we go, and you know, I don't need to tell any of you in this room how important it is to actually talk to people who use your services and how powerful that can be. So, taking the plunge. We decided in about it was about sort of like mid to late 2015, we decided to sign up to the different social media platforms. If I'm honest, our trust wasn't in the best place at this time. Lots of bad press, lots in the media, quite a lot around our performance figures, our performance rates, our response times, hospital handover delays. So we weren't really in the best place, but we obviously had lots of modernisation plans in the pipeline, so we have improved since then. At the time, lots of other NHS Wales organisations were creating social media accounts. It took us a little bit of time to follow suit. I think we were a bit scared because of the reasons I just said. So we were sort of like maybe sitting back and seeing how other guys were going to, what they were going to do. So as soon as our corporate comms teams, our corporate comms department set up Facebook and Twitter, etc., we felt quite strongly that our department maybe required their own Twitter account and our own social media platform so we could have control over it. We were generally out and about daily doing different things, engaging with all of those different groups. I said a few of them earlier on. So we really wanted a bit of flexibility and control to promote and do our own work. So we just bit the bullet and did it and launched our own account. So we do work closely with our corporate comms department. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I will say that social media is only a tiny part of our world and our work. The majority of people who use our services are older people, so it is questionable as to whether those people, our service users and some of our partners will follow some of our accounts. But we find lots of our partners and some of our, lots of our stakeholders will follow us, and they're a really good sort of like channel to get information out to different people. So this is a funny one, so sort of like connecting with people. We know sort of like the power of social media. How many people have walked down the street and nearly walked into something because they're just on their phone looking down the whole time? On the train coming up yesterday, the people's faces are just in their phones. It's hilarious. In my sister's house, my sister, my brother-in-law, my 12-year-old and my 9-year-old nephew can just be sitting there for hours, not even talking, not even communicating. They are just there on their own social media. So I don't know how popular this statement is, but we were doing some work with our organisational development colleagues a couple of years ago. We were talking about social media, and somebody said, if you want to engage with people, go where they go. Go fish where the fish are. Has anybody heard that statement? Yeah. So, if more and more people are going to social media, obviously we want a presence there. However, we do realise that a lot of people who may use our services aren't really on those platforms. So we need to think long and hard about how maybe we encourage some of them to follow us. So even if people do have access to those social media accounts, will they want to follow an ambulance service? When you look at some of our health board colleagues in Wales, huge followers. People are generally interested in the health services, then what the GPs are up to, what the hospitals are up to, hospital changes and things like that. An ambulance service, I don't know. So, the first step for us is getting people interested in what we do. People need to want to be a part of something on social media if they were to follow us. That's why we try to, and hopefully you'll see that shortly, we do try to make our posts interesting. It's about the real stuff, real feedback, what people are telling us, the good, the bad, the ugly, real stories, as well as, pushing information out around life-saving skills, how to do CPR, how to use a defib, so the real practical stuff that's going to be helpful for people. I'm going to pass over to my colleague.
So across the Trust as a whole, there are lots of different social media accounts that are active and are managed by different departments in different ways. So alongside the accounts that we manage as a patient experience team, we have accounts that are managed by our corporate comms department, and those accounts are used more for sharing corporate messages with the public, talking about what the the trust is doing, what our performance statistics are like, how we're performing. And more our corporate comms is using those kind of accounts to communicate with staff, because the nature of the service that we are, most of our staff aren't actually office-based. They are sitting behind a desk looking at a computer on a daily basis, and so they're using the social media accounts to be able to communicate messages with staff. We also have lots of departments within the organisation, like we have an LGBT staff network who have a Twitter account of their own. We have lots of community first responder groups who are all volunteers who run their own Twitter and Facebook accounts. We have a cycle response unit who have a Twitter account of their own. We have a hazardous area response team who have a Twitter account of their own. Our chief exec has a Twitter account of her own. So there are lots and lots of different kind of Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts that are active across the trust. But the ones we're going to talk about today, I'm going to look at today, are these couple that are highlighted here, and these are the ones that we as a patient experience team kind of use on a daily basis to talk about what we do to try and engage with patients. So looking at who our followers are and what our reach is actually through through social media, all the Twitter accounts that we have access to, we've got about 3,500 followers on each of those accounts, and we reach, or so far this year, we've reached about 500,000 people through each of those accounts so far, and we have about 1,500 followers on the Facebook account, and we reach about 9,000 people a month through that on a monthly basis. The people that actually follow us are a really mixed group of people, lots of staff, lots of other NHS organisations, lots of other ambulance services across the UK, lots of third sector and voluntary sector groups who kind of follow us and will share information with the communities and the kind of people that they are there to represent, and lots of higher level people as well follow us, and so people like the Health Minister for Wales, the Children's Commissioner for Wales, the Older People's Commissioner for Wales. They'll be looking at kind of what we're sharing and how that can lead into the work that they're doing on a more strategic level. So just looking a little bit at what we share, I don't know how kind of clearly you can see these. The next couple of slides are just some examples of some of the things that we share on social media and what it is that we're using it for. So these kind of are just some examples of some of the community engagement work that we do. As Alison said, most of our time is spent actually not in the office but out and about, talking to different communities, actually at different events, going to different groups, going to different patient support groups, going to where we actually find people to talk to and ask them about experiences of using services and ask them what it is that they want from us as an organisation. So this is a picture of us at a 50+ forum, at the Learning Disability Group, at the local agricultural show. So we're just kind of using social media to demonstrate that we're, as an organisation, we're very active with our kind of patient experience and our kind of engagement work, and that we're an organisation that wants to be kind of engaging to patients and listening to what it is that they've got to say. We also try and use social media as much as we can to kind of generate a discussion, to kind of get some information back from the public. So we are at the moment in the process of putting together a list of promises to children and younger people, so helping us to focus on what children and younger people are saying about the services that we provide and what they particularly want from us. So we've used Twitter and Facebook to try and talk to children and younger people about what it is that they want from us as an organisation, and to try and get them to kind of give us their feedback through Twitter and Facebook about what it is that they expect from us. And something else that's relatively new to us is we've started to use Twitter polls. So we're asking a targeted question, and then we're able to measure what the response is from members of the public about what that question is that we're asking. So this one on the screen is, when we come and engage with you, what kind of information do you want us to share with you? What's really important to you that you want us to tell you about when we come out to kind of an engagement event, or we come and visit your local group? We use social media to mark events in the calendar, so kind of relevant events in the calendar. When it's things like Hate Crime Week, we'll share information about how you can report a hate crime, why it's really important that you report a hate crime, and how that affects your health and the NHS. We use it to kind of promote Pride events, how we're involved in Pride events. We are, what's that one there? Oh, as an Alzheimer's Society. We're a dementia-friendly. We have dementia-friendly status as an organisation, so we're kind of promoting the fact that we're an organisation that listens to the needs and wants of people who have dementia and their carers. And we're also fully signed up as well to the Hello My Name Is campaign and kind of promoting dignity and respect of patients. And so we're using social media to kind of to show that we're kind of signed up to all of these different equality and diversity messages, and helping to demonstrate to staff, to patients, to potential staff that we're you know, an equal, inclusive kind of workplace. As Alison said, in the past we have had a lot of negative press. So we wanted to try and do something to kind of try and share some positive experiences. So we kind of use every Thursday the hashtag Thank You Thursday to share with all of our followers some of the positive things that patients have had to say about us. So we kind of just look at all the different compliments that come into the organisation. We kind of choose ones that we think you know, don't contain too much sensitive information, and we use a tweet once a week to just share, you know, a positive experience that someone's had. These are all from our YouTube channel. We use YouTube to share videos about patient stories that we've created. So talking to patients about positive experiences that they may have had, where we've actually gone to the patient, recorded them talking about their experience and the learning that's kind of like had for us as a trust. We share messages on there about different communities that we're working with. There's lots of information, for example, where we've worked with deaf and hard of hearing communities, where we've produced information in an accessible format. You know, so it will be in BSL, it will be subtitled, there'll be an audio format, producing information in formats that are as accessible as we can make them, and we're using utilizations, Director of Patient Safety, Director of Workforce, all of the senior team, they all have their own Twitter accounts and are quite happy to answer some messages from staff directly. We've got some other Twitter accounts for various other different things going on within the trust. So across the trust as a whole, there's a real you know, culture change and a shift towards being happy to use social media as a mechanism to communicate with staff and patients and the public. And that's it. The second one, yeah, it is an easy one, yeah. The most of what we do, we will tweet in English. We do use some Welsh sometimes. You know, there are a couple of members of our team who are Welsh speakers, so you know, yeah, it's possible for us to tweet in Welsh as well, and we will if there are important messages around larger campaigns like Defibrillator in October and things like that that kind of generate a bit more interest. Then we will tweet things in Welsh as well, yeah. So, but not everything. Most things are just done in English, and we seem to manage to, you know, even though we have, I don't know how we get around doing that, to be honest with you.
I think that one there now, around sort of like contributing to our saving a life, I think most of the feedback we have really is from our community first responders there. So if generally we talk to younger adults, they will love the fact that they can at 18 become a, can you hear me, sorry? They will love the fact that at 18 they can become a community first responder, so it looks good in their CV then if they're volunteering, as well as developing the great skills that we teach them. So I think that sort of like the younger people that we talk to who go on to become community first responders, and there's a lot of them, always feedback to us around, well yeah, because they're out there daily then, essentially saving lives. It's not always a great outcome, but they are, they do have some good outcomes, positive outcomes as well, but they are saving lives.
The second one down is quite, there's a link asking you to leave some feedback. We don't use SurveyMonkey. There's a piece of software called Feedback Server that we, as an organisation, have bought a license to use, and it's kind of very much like SurveyMonkey, but it allows us to kind of tailor surveys and things like that to our own needs, and it has the ability to run reports and to kind of create graphs and that kind of thing that allows us to see what people are saying on, when we do surveys on
Is that, sorry, how much, is that earlier, or is that new? How much of the social media activity is due to the leadership and culture? That is a tough one, because I would say at the start we were nervous about having the accounts, but I think when we sort of like saw what other services were up to, we just bit the bullet and did it. Then I think we fully embraced it. When we had, I think, some new colleagues and some new communications colleagues, we've just employed like a digital communications officer as well. So we're getting there. And I do think, like I said earlier on, about sort of like everybody having a Twitter account now, it just demonstrates that everybody is signed up to it now and everybody's using it freely. Until recently, staff across NHS Wales weren't allowed to access social media in work. So if I was on my computer, I wouldn't be able to access Facebook or Twitter or anything. But in our department now, we can do that. And only recently now has that been opened up for staff to be able to access Facebook and Twitter in work, which I think you need to do. People need to have access to it and use it daily. But generally, we are relying on people to use their own mobile phones to do it.
Was social media officer at Nelft, and what he's been doing is some fantastic work with using social media internally.
Thanks, Caroline. Just start off, it's been fantastic to be here today. We've heard so many different stories and so many social media from so many different perspectives, so it's been fantastic. And I think some of my stuff might cross over with what we've heard earlier, but hopefully I can provide a different perspective to it. So just to say, so my presentation is going to cover three main areas. Kind of first of all, talking about my own personal journey with social media and how I integrated that into what I do at work. Then talking about how our staff are using social media and how we're empowering them to do that. And then also just about the staff engagement event that we've run now for the last 2 years, which is Nelft SoMe Week. Yep. As I said, if there's any questions on these that I can't answer during the presentation, I'll be talking about this more during my tabletop session with Ben Greenwood later on. So, first of all, so everyone saw my title, Empowering Staff to Use Social Media. So did anyone notice anything wrong with that or anything wrong with the words I used there? No. So I used the term staff instead of people. And one thing that I've been trying to get across when working with people in our trust is the fact that, you should, if you're going to use social media, within your services or teams, think about it in terms of how would you use it yourself as a person, and what would you like to see if this showed up on your Facebook or Twitter feed. And by coming that across, that sort of helps to make people feel a little bit easier and also helps them to focus on what messages they want to share. So my social media journey, so I'm not sure how clear the pictures are with this, but I'm very active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And part of this, I started off in this, really I got my first job in social media from talking about how I was using it personally. And since then, I've always tried to sort of look back through my own personal, how I would use it personally, and try and reflect that and try and incorporate that into what I do for our corporate accounts. As you can see, I think someone else talked about how they were using social media at Pride, and that was actually my first Pride campaign. And one of the things I thought was really cool was that, as a social media person, as going out to these events, you can kind of experience these and kind of, it can sort of take whatever, it's sort of change whatever message you would like to share and give a different perspective. So just a personal one again, just of me. So this was at we were nominated for Team of the Year at the AHCAM Healthcare Awards. So just sharing a bit about that. But also, I'm not sure how clear the text is there, but recently a member of staff within our communications team joined Twitter. And one thing that was really good about that was that they were, they did that just off the back of seeing what our staff were doing, but also just because they wanted to use it themselves. And I thought that was really, really sort of inspiring. I thought that was really useful to kind of feedback to how we're using social media within the trust. So some of our speakers, the whole thing around this is that some of our speakers, like myself, we use social media personally, but we also incorporate sort of professional work into our own onto our personal social media, which is something I try to encourage within the trust. Is that don't you look at separate accounts. Try and see a way, if possible, and if you prefer to see how you could incorporate both your professional life into your personal life. So, lessons learned in this. So, social media is subjective. So, one of the things I found was that, what one person might like reading on social media might not be everyone else's cup of tea, and it shouldn't do is it shouldn't put you off using it, but rather look at sort of like what you're sharing and try and get in with groups that might be talking about the same thing. You need to have passion for it, and anyone who does social media in their organization will agree with this, that I think if you don't have passion for what you're doing, or you don't have passion for social media, then it'll be more difficult to actually convey that whenever you're operating corporate accounts or whenever you're trying to empower your own staff to use social media. One thing. So yeah, just off the back of that, we all have personal lives, so don't be afraid to share that on social media, and don't be afraid to share that in line with your work, because it adds a bit of personality. It allows people to learn a bit about the person behind the accounts, and sometimes you'll find that more people. Also time. There was a question there was a mention in one of the presentations earlier. I think it was maybe Slido, about our staff given time to monitor these accounts, and their staff actually allowed designated time. What we would say is that that social media shouldn't be viewed as this sort of extra thing, this sort of task that you have to do. You should really want to do it, and you should look to incorporate it into how you're promoting your existing promotion of your events or of your key messages. So everybody's doing it. So I asked a question on Facebook, really round about, when do you update your Facebook or Twitter status? It was a little bit of, bit of fun, but also a behavioural thing around, learning about people's habits. So when you update so I do it on the train, do it on the tube, do it with porridge, do it very rarely. I do it when I'm waiting for my 9-year-old to put shoes on. I do it covered with a tagger, which was quite interesting. I looked more into that, and it was around an actual event that this guy was doing. And then the bottom one here, I do it when I have something interesting to say. So it's kind of looking at people's habits and looking at how they're using it, and then some of these habits you can take with you whenever you're empowering your people within your organization to use social media. So just coming on to NELT's Social Media Week, which I don't know if many of you heard about it on Twitter, or you might have heard about it from other areas. We have organised this event for the last 2 years. I think in the first year we were trending for, I think it was the last day of the week between Exeter Fire and Clocks Go Back. So quite interesting. It was quite useful to kind of see, right, how would that work, and how does that maybe give us more confidence in running these events? So how it came about. So won't lie, it was kind of my own passion project, and it was quite useful to kind of do that and to see how staff reacted to that. I was quite lucky that our Director of Communications, as well as a lot of our executive board team, are quite active on social media, more to Twitter, and they were able to kind of see the value of that, and they were willing to listen to me and hear me out. So increase in demand from staff to set up the service accounts. So before we ran this event in 2016, we had around, I think we only had around 2 service accounts that were up and running, and you will hear from the person behind those later. But since then, between this period of 11 months between the first event and the second event, I think we had around 20 to 25 services come forward to asking to set up these accounts. So promotion of brand and our work, and kind of maybe how we're using social media and providing other NHS staff and other sort of like public sector people to look at maybe share advice and share tips on how they can use social media. So the aims, as I said, highlight the fantastic progress and uptake by staff, showcase examples of best practice in social media. I'll go on in the next couple of slides to talk about maybe how we engaged with other organisations across the country and how we incorporated them into our event. Also empowering them to use social media, using emerging social media trends such as live streaming, such as Twitter takeovers, such as Slido, for example, and seeing how they can use that and what would suit best for engaging with their patients and engaging members of the public. So activity during the week, just a little bit of a breakdown. So we were quite lucky in that because of the interest from the first week, we were able to engage with London Ambulance Service, General Medical Council, NHS England, and the team, the Health London Partnership, who, if you haven't heard of them, they're the team behind NHS Go. So 2 social media drop-in sessions, which were one-to-one sessions and focused on, the key questions that people had and how we were able to support them. And Twitter takeovers, which I'll go on to in a little bit. So just a few photos from the events. So down at the bottom here, we've got Anna MacArthur, who's the head of media and campaigns for London Ambulance. We've got Tanita Cross from General Medical Council, and the one there, that is our Chief Executive, John Browder, with one of our other speakers. So, NHS-style Twitter takeovers. So, just a quick question. How many people have heard or come across the @NHS Twitter account? Brilliant, yeah. So it has been quite popular, and I've met quite a few times with the team behind that, and it's really come off as as the main way for allowing patients, members of the public, but also NHS people to share their story on the platform in a way that they may not have been able to do before. So some rules I had around it. So no involvement from communications on the day. The last involvement I had with the team was the day before, where I gave them the Twitter password. I said, look, can you just change the profile picture, but also just change the bio. That's the last involvement. Keep it personal and professional, so bring in a little mix, show a little bit of personality within your tweets. And use this as an opportunity to shine a light on your service that you may not necessarily been able to before. So just to go through, so this is one of the days. So as I said, we are bringing in the corporate, which was, they shared this book around online data privacy, but also just sharing a bit about their healthy lunch, what they were eating for lunch as well. This was from our children's services. This from one of our inpatient rehab services who look at various different things, including physiotherapy. One of our nurse consultants for long-term conditions, and tissue viability nurse. And one thing we were really keen on is, whatever you find interesting, if it was a news article or Twitter, and just again, the pictures might come out better whenever we share the slides after this. But there's just some impressions, and I think in total we had around 62,000 impressions throughout the course of that week. So over the 7-day period, it was about maybe just under 10,000. So some of the feedback. This is some of the feedback we had on the week from NHS people, and it was interesting that while they're sharing that, you know, their followers are able to see that, and our whole point this week wasn't around, you know, look at us, look at something good that we're doing. We wanted this to be an opportunity to share, for everyone to share advice, for everyone to gain something from this. And I think someone mentioned the line earlier, which is brilliant. If we can get one person actually involved, and actually, you know, this can make a difference, that one person, then, you know, then I just think that's my job done. That's something that I feel prouder about, rather than the 700 people who are watching it via Periscope. So, as I say, this was all around staff engagement. This was all around providing tips for these things, and I've included in some of the posters and some of the attachments that I sent to Caroline and the team, just some tips around, you know, the main questions and the main top tips for staff, such as, you know, be yourself, be patient with it, and, you know, just have fun. So how you can have your own social media week. So decide on the objectives, what you want to achieve. And sometimes with social media, you find that a lot of people, what you might feel that people will drive this week, you have to make sure that it aligns with trust objectives, and it's something that when presenting this to your board of directors, or when presenting this to your management team, it's something that they will be quite focused on. And it means that, you know, if you can link it round to their objectives, they're more keen to take it on. So yeah, corporate objectives. For example, one of the events that we did in our first year was around recruitment, and we held an event completely on using LinkedIn for recruitment. And obviously, big thing within the NHS. Look at guest speakers, whether you want to look at internal or external. One of the good things that we found already while doing our second event is that because of the amount of staff that were using social media, and because of the amount of people that were, you know, actively engaging with us, we were able to use them as spokespeople, and we were able to use them as ambassadors for this week. So we were able to concentrate a lot more on them rather than people just listening to me for an hour. Support from staff, as I said. Book venues. One of the issues that, while that might sound quite common sense, one of the issues that we had was that we chose a venue for one of the events this year that wasn't the best in terms of technology, and we kind of had a few hurdles that we had to overcome with that. Create visual content guides to share. So quite a few of these I've shared with Caroline and the team that will be shared wider after this. And it's important to make sure that while the presentations are going on, and while you've got people watching the events and actually engaging, actually attending the events, it's important to keep an ongoing theme going on social media. What I found was, because I'm the main person in charge of our social media accounts, sometimes, you know, if I'm speaking at these events, there's no one maybe sort of monitoring this. So I wanted to make sure I used Hootsuite and TweetDeck a lot to sort of schedule stuff in that was going along, stuff related to the events and to the presentations that I was able to share, and that was able to keep that going and keep using the hashtag. So finding your own social media champions. So we talked quite a bit today about, you know, maybe we're still not sure about staff, you know, allowing staff onto social media, or allowing staff to sort of operate our sort of service accounts. And one of the things I would say about it is sometimes you just need to trial it out, and I wouldn't be afraid of just trialing it and working with staff and seeing how it goes. If it doesn't work, you can close the accounts down. And I'll just mention a couple of these things. So look at existing social media users and look at people who are using social media personally. And one of the things that I say is, if you're using it personally, it's not a huge leap between using it personally and using it professionally. All you need to think about is in terms of the content that you're sharing, in terms of the messages. Focus on key services. So, for example, with ourselves, we focus Facebook on, say, our children's services or our older adult services. Twitter, we'll focus on services that want to get more messages out to CCGs, to local councils. And Instagram, we're currently looking, while we have our own corporate Instagram account, we're looking at Instagram for our children's services. So it's key to concentrate on those key audiences, key channels, and see where you can go with them. Provide training sessions and how-to guides. So we mentioned it before, but it's so important to provide that training and provide that ongoing regular updates with them. Someone was mentioning to me earlier about updates that we might get from NHS and the benefits that has. Engaging with your customer service users, what you might find, especially with children's services, is you might find that you've been concentrating on website or you've been concentrating on emails, but that might not be necessarily the best platform in order to engage with them. And so you might try that. You might be wondering, oh, I'm not getting enough engagement on that, or I'm not getting enough interaction through that. And just focus on the channel. By focusing on the channel that they're on, by getting the message directly to them, which social media can provide, you can find that you might get a lot more engagement, and you might find that a lot more people will interact. Support during campaigns. Staff can be, as an organisation, we have a lot of campaigns that we're told about, and I think it was last month there was about 5 or 6 different health campaigns all going on at the one time. And what you might find that the corporate account, you might not be able to cover all of those. By having staff having people on social media, and by allowing them to have their service accounts, they can promote that campaign and they can promote those messages a lot more effectively than perhaps we could. So, I'm going to stop. I don't know if this video is going to work. Yep.
When I was asked to lead on the social media sites for our services, my first instinct was to panic, because my involvement with social media really was just posting a few pictures on Facebook. Our service has really it's taken off, it's gone places, because we've been able to do a lot of networking, liaise with a lot of other agencies that we might not have come across in our routine day-to-day work. We've been noticed by the local press because of some of the things that we have been doing, and they got in touch and wanted to do articles. We were also able to get some savings within our service, because when I started feeling confident that our social media pages were going well, I spoke with the comms team again, and a lot of the information that we give to our parents, we were able to transfer it via links to our webpage, and also have those links available on our social media pages so parents could access it. So instead of ordering our leaflets or printing them off, we were able to just give that information electronically. I think doing that alone was able to save our service over £20,000.
I have to say, before joining Nelft, I wasn't a user, for example, of Twitter. Now I use Twitter on a regular basis. It keeps me in touch with the pulse of the organisation. It helps me to see and realise and understand better what's going on throughout the organisation and what's foremost in the minds of all of our employees and staff.
Right. We cover a really big area as an organisation, and we have thousands of staff. So how do you effectively communicate with them? It's really important for me to have a platform that I can use, that is effective, that I can get to lots of people without physical presence.
Social media, it isn't scary at all. It's actually a very, for me, I see it as a very positive forum for engaging with our parents and our children and young people, and they have really welcomed it as well. I mean, we have had feedback from our parents. We had parents, you know, we would take pictures of some of the parents and children at some of our activities, and obviously we have to have consent to do that. And they would follow that up. You know, they would ask us when are the pictures going to appear on the pages. So they're quite interested at what we are doing on social media, and they're really happy to join in with us.
So that's just a little bit. As I said, Catherine was one of the first people within our organisation that we allowed them to have social media accounts for their children's services, and as you can see the results from them. The other thing from that video is we had I was quite lucky whenever I joined North East London Foundation Trust that our chief executive and a lot of our managers and then trust chair were already on Twitter or were quite keen to have that conversation, and that's made my role a lot easier in terms of some of the campaigns that I do, for example, SOMI Week, and also just in terms of how I can get involved in events. And I would say that for staff, if you are looking at social media, or you are looking at doing these campaigns with other colleagues, show them that you've got support. Show them that there are other people using social media, and that will help in sort of making them feel a little bit more confident. Just some feedback we've got here. So one of the biggest selling points for commissioners, which I think is quite keen. And just to finish off, so the big question, obviously the title of my presentation was to empower staff, but the question shouldn't be, should we empower staff to use social media? It's kind of like how, through using the tips and using the learning that we've gained here today, how can we take that and how can we go out and have our services on social media and get more of our colleagues involved in this? So thank you for listening today. I realise at the end of the day it's quite long, but if you have any questions, I can answer them now. As I said in my tabletop session with Ben, we can answer more of them in more detail. Thank you. Okay, I'll start with that top one. Has this had an impact on work-life balance and staff well-being? It's interesting because there's a question around sort of like work-life balance and kind of doing that. But I find that if staff or people are already using it personally, we don't encourage our people who monitor our service accounts to use it after 5 p.m. In fact, we include it in our disclaimer. But if they're using it personally already, if they're passionate about it, you will find that they will just use it anyway. And we haven't actually heard that, but we haven't actually heard someone question that. But if they do, I can sort of just give them that advice. No, not at all. It doesn't dilute. In fact, what it does is it means that people following those service accounts are looking for those specific messages, and people are aware that through our corporate account, we will stick it to corporate messages, and we will keep it to trust-wide things. And what we find interesting was that people didn't recognise NELFT, or North East London Foundation Trust, as a brand. People recognise us as the NHS or that service that they refer to. So while they might not follow us, they will recognise more of that service, and they'll be able to find those key messages on there. Let's see. Okay, benefits of using Instagram. Instagram, I find it is much more visual platform, and we find that especially for our younger services and young people, we find that they weren't engaging with us on Facebook, and they weren't really interacting with us. They were interacting with us a bit through Twitter, but if you'll hear, sort of like, it's interesting, I was at a young person's forum and they were saying, oh no, we don't use Twitter at all. We don't use Facebook, we only use Instagram and Snapchat. So it's sort of in terms of that, again, it goes back to my earlier message where I'll say about finding the right platform for your audience and finding the right one that you can properly convey your messages through. Do we have time for one more? Okay. I think the third one there is more of the statement. Can your staff use work computers? Yes, it was interesting that someone mentioned, I think it was a group before me from Welsh Ambulance mentioned that it wasn't long ago that they had social media allowed on their work computers, and it was something that I was quite clear on when I joined the trust, especially for people who are now using their services, because you have to be able to, there might be a difference between people using it or just sitting on it, or people actually using it for work purposes, and people have to have that option. And one thing, because many of you may know that Facebook, Twitter, other social media don't necessarily work as well on Internet Explorer. So what I've said is I've worked with our IT team to make sure that if people are having these service accounts, to make sure that they have Google Chrome installed as well, so that there'll be no issues around, there'll be no technical issues, and that they're able to have the best experience through that. Yeah. Great. I'd say I can answer more of these in our session.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we are going to have the afternoon tabletop discussions, and we'll have a list of them coming up soon. This is those. I think we'll tell you, some of them are common, you can see what they're about, you've heard from the speakers. There's a couple you might need a bit more explanation about, so we'll ask John soon to come up and tell us what his is all about. And also myself and Leslie are going to ask people to come and join a discussion about, well, what can we do? And Carl set it up very nicely, really. What can we do to kind of encourage people to use social media proactively to improve healthcare? So, but before we go on to talk about what these are going to be like, I wonder if we could ask Leanne to come up and tell us a little bit more about Fab Change Week. Is that all right? Do we have Leanne's slides available? Yes, thank you. While Leanne's coming up, I'll just ask you to choose 2 of these tabletop discussions. So there'll be 8 tables. We'll put the names of the tables up in a minute, and they'll each run for 30 minutes, so you'll be able to join 2 tabletop discussions, and obviously just see where there's spaces and which ones you want to go to when we go into that. You'll be able to choose over the coffee break. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for letting me attend this fabulous conference that we have about social media. My name's Leanne, and I'm here along with my colleague Helen. It's not Danny, and we're going to be telling you about the Academy of Fabulous Stuff. So I know we're all, it's a little bit late in the day, we're all really tired and wanting to go, but could I ask everybody to stand up, please? Yeah. Has anybody who's not heard of the Academy Fab Stuff, could you all sit down? Oh, my job here is done. That's great. Has anybody shared any of the Fab Stuff with the Academy? Could you sit down? Oh, okay. Oh, there's actually quite a lot of people that have shared. There's a lot of people actually that have shared their fab work with the Academy, so everybody else can sit. Okay. So I'll pass over to
Leanne asked me to come to explain how the Fab Academy came about. changed their hobbies with Helen Bevan, the Horizons team, 4 years ago, if memory serves me correct. I think it was about 2 years ago we came on board with the Fabulous Stuff and became ambassadors. Like-minded people come together, sharing good practice, especially projects, which is all shared on the website. I don't know actually what else to do on here.
Basically, the slide sort of speaks for itself. Yeah. You know, we're not going to read it out to you. But what I would suggest is that you Google Academy of Fab Stuff. Sorry. Google the Academy of Fab Stuff, and it actually comes up, and you will actually see all the fabulous work that people do. It's very easy to share. You don't need to be a member of it. If you have a fabulous piece of work that you want to share with the world, because you know it's all it's a virtual website, there's no building, and because it got so big over the past 3 years, they introduced the Fab Ambassadors. So Fab Ambassadors are people that are full of energy, passion for change, but they also want to share their fabulous stuff with everybody else, but they also want to encourage you to share your fabulous stuff. There are 140 Fab Ambassadors at the moment in England and Wales. They're trying to push into Scotland. Ultimately, we would have a Fab Ambassador in every organisation, every GP practice, every nursing home. So you can imagine there should be a Fab Ambassador everywhere, and that's all about sharing our fab stuff. So next week is Fab Change Week, which is an NHS England led. We've just sort of came along and made it a bit more fun, because you know sometimes you can put in NHS England and people go, oh, it's a bit stuffy for me. So we've just made it a bit more fun, and it started off as a day, but now it's turned into a week, and that just makes it a bit more easier, a bit more accessible for our frontline staff to attend events that's happening. So it's in 3 steps. So we are asking people to pledge a change. Second step is put that change into action. And then next week is sharing your outcomes. Now in quality improvement, we are not about failure, we're about learning. Okay, so even if you do pledge a change, it's not about, oh well, you know, my idea didn't come to fruition. It's about, actually, I learned this. We'll share that learning, because there might be somebody else that's going down that similar path that could think, oh, they've learned that, I can go down a different path. We've got pledges at the back, so if anybody wants to make that pledge, we'd be really grateful. We have had some people pledging already, which is quite good. And that's us. Oh. Oh. Short and sharp.
Fab, thank you. So that's one of the tabletop discussions that we're going to choose after our coffee break. Titles here, some of them are running more than once because there are different people here. Aren't they amazing names for our tables? Can you read them all there? Appy Comms Peeps, Diverse Northerners, Selfie. Hang on, I've written that down phonetically somewhere. I'm going to have to ask for help for that one. Mersey Drizzle, Team Hashtag, Outside the Box, and SoMe7. So there we are. Some of them are self-explanatory, some aren't. So I'm going to ask Leslie first to describe the one that myself and Leslie will be running. We're going to do 60 seconds, no more. We'll time it, just elevator pitch to you. And then John, who's here doing the live streaming, he does a lot more than live streaming. So he's going to run a tabletop discussion which will be about creating patient voice video diaries. So he'll tell you a bit more about that. So Leslie, I know you've got a pitch.
I'm going to read it out, so like in true Dragon's Den style, I don't sound as if I've got lots of stutter. So, we've heard about some exciting online communities and activities this morning. So, listening to the talks, you might be misled into thinking that the internet is absolutely bursting with online conversations between health professionals and the public. Well, that's not quite true, is it? I think we're starting to realise that. Remember, we're the early adopters, so in situations like this, we're often preaching to the converted. So our own research with women has shown that practitioners feel vulnerable and ill-equipped to engage in online conversations with patients, yet patients need to talk to practitioners to be able to make sense of the myriad online information sources. Engaging online also presents an ideal opportunity for patients and practitioners to collaborate in service improvement. So, what is needed is something that will support this interaction to enable an effective exchange of online information for the sake of improved health outcomes, in order to equip people, patients and practitioners with the skills and confidence to engage well online. A group of us, Caroline, myself, Bev, Kathy, Christina, have had some ideas. We've had a couple of meetings now and we've got some really good ideas about how we could do this using a dedicated online social media learning hub which cuts across all the professions and would be co-created by patients and practitioners. And in the session this afternoon we'd like to share these ideas with you and in particular hear your ideas and suggestions back to do a sort of a bit of a feasibility